On a random day, monsters began to appear all over the planet. Amidst widespread panic, people fled from a monster holding a car, calling for help and trying to escape. Cities were destroyed, and along with the monsters, a mysterious structure emerged from nowhere. A news helicopter hovered over the area, the reporter stating that the structure had not shown any activity and that the military was keeping a close watch on it. This structure, resembling a mountain with several windows, appeared alongside the monsters, leaving people anxious about the chain of supernatural phenomena occurring. The mountain that emerged in the city center seemed more like a tower, with entrances and exits on all sides, and its interior glowed with a purple light. This was the first clash between the tutorial tower and humanity. The tower periodically summoned humans from around the world, forcibly pulling them inside without any parameter requirements such as age or gender. Inside, they were compelled to complete it, forming groups of adventurers. However, the tower was so challenging that only 20% of participants survived. Those who did survive returned stronger and with special abilities, becoming humanity's only hope in the fight against the monsters. 12 years after the tower's first completion, two-tongued frog monsters were attacked by a purple ray that sliced them in half. The man who cast this ray was a blonde, light-eyed young man known as the Hunter. People around him cheered for his arrival, taking photos as if he were a celebrity. After the tower, hunters became idols of humanity, receiving attention from all sides. As a hunter, one could aspire to the same fame and fortune as celebrities. Ordinary people who saw them on TV longed to become hunters, marking the beginning of a new era when hunters became part of the power of nations. That's when they raised their prices, and to protect themselves from the government, they formed hunter-only organizations. These organizations, known as guilds, made peace treaties with governments, becoming an essential part of society and even participating in TV programs. The show, Getting to Know Hunters, features news and curiosities about hunters, and today they are with the leaders of 3 major guilds. The first is the leader of the Goguryeo Guild, Seo Kwon-han, a man with brown hair and eyes and a striking look on his face. The second is the leader of the Orangs Guild, Seo Young-lee, a woman with blue hair and eyes and a gentle gaze. The third is the leader of the Seoul Guild, Sai-hyun Kim, a handsome man with red eyes and a modern appearance. Getting to Know Hunters was developed based on what is popular, and last week, thanks to public support, a viewership rate of 35.7% made it the most popular program. The host asked the participants about an advanced player living in the tutorial. The guild masters are startled, but she continues to inquire if they know who this advanced player is. Kwon-han says that if there are recent reports about him, it seems he has not died and is leading a good life. Yeon-lee says there is no one who does not know who that person is. He was the first player sent to the tower with them, someone who has been trapped inside the tower for 12 years. Hyun Kim says it's more like a curse. He can't leave like the other players, endlessly returning to the first floor of the tower, having to start over again. The reporter is impressed with a hunter who has completed the tower repeatedly, commenting that hunters only leave the tower after training all basic skills to the limit, and a man who has completed it repeatedly for 12 years must have become a very powerful hunter. There are rumors that he could complete from the 1st to the 100th floor in one day. Inside the tower, people run desperately asking for help, wearing armor, bows, and swords, except for one man who wears casual clothes and sandals. People are brutally thrown into the air, falling to the ground shortly after. The man, with an unconcerned look on his face, faces the 10th floor's boss of the tower, a demonic monster with fiery hair and horns protruding from his forehead. Just the head of Balak is the size of the man, showing how large his body is. The man says that if he could leave the tower, he might be placed in rank A or higher. People on the internet comment about the advanced player. Some say that it's possible to achieve rank A or S after leaving the tower, but they wonder which tower they need to exit to get that ranking. Rank S is capable of destroying mountains just by using their abilities. A guy comments that he saw the advanced player when he climbed the dungeon on floor 72. 3 werewolves appeared and he continued moving forward, defeating them alone. They also say that he was able to kick a monster from the 1st floor to the 10th. This man fights against the final boss, kicking his face with a smile. The impact of his kick is so strong that the boss embeds his chin in the ground. He again places his feet on the boss's head and starts shouting, asking who is the boss there. The man with a wicked smile on his face says, worth 10 points. He's the guy worth 12. The subjugation of the boss ends with the last attack being from the sandal. He looks at the boss on the ground disappearing and says he will have to start all over again. In the last 12 years, the time needed to complete the tower has decreased. There are several towers in the world, but all of them have the same theme. Because of this, every time new groups of hunters completed it, easier ways to complete it were spread, allowing people to get better equipment and better strategies to fight the monsters, all of which was passed on to the entire planet. So much so that there are even records of who conquers the tutorial tower the fastest, but the tower is not that easy. An explosion hit several hunters at once. Even though they had refined knowledge of how to conquer the tower, only a few individuals were successful in the conquest. A young man lying on the ground looks fearfully at the monster he is facing. Upon reaching floor 99, many players lost their lives in the fight against the boss. The last test of the tower was brutal. 70 out of 95 people were killed by him. This terrifying existence reaped the lives of more than half of the aspiring hunters, and this same existence takes a flying kick to the head. The participants watch Balak's head fly off the body. The man who did that lands on the ground, with this being 1349 completions of the tower. He stands face to face with a purple portal with roots around it and size. Blinking his eyes open, he is greeted with the message, "Welcome to the tutorial tower, heading for completion number 1350. The man begins to laugh over and over until he falls to the ground. In his vast empty hall, he yells, cursing the tower and pleading to go home. He lies on the floor, still sighing, and opens the status window. A floating screen appears before his eyes. Hyun Woo Kim, 26 years old, has almost all of his attributes at the tutorial's limit. 12 years ago, he faced the same boss with a group of hunters. With great effort, they managed to kill the boss and complete the tower, happy that they could return home. In front of the portal, the group says that if it weren't for him, they would never have completed the tower. He tells them not to lose touch when they go outside. However, when he opens his eyes again, he is greeted with the message, "Welcome to the tutorial tower," and the armor that covered his body also disappeared, and he had to complete it again with other people. A message saying he was cursed by the tower appears in front of him, leaving him annoyed and with his status screen. After trying to deny reality, he went after a cure for his curse, completing the tutorial tower alone several times. He strengthened his body to the limit, able to destroy piles of rocks as if they were nothing. But every time he completed the tower, he returned to the first floor. Nothing worked. Even after trying all possible methods for 5 years, he was unable to find a way out. Already desperate and disillusioned, thinking he would never leave the tower, he began to enjoy it in his own way. He disguises himself and talks to beginners, saying he has a mission for them. This is his act of playing the NPC. Then he plays a military instructor who helps train the hunters, wearing a cap and military clothes he took from a former military man who became a hunter. However, after a while, he grew tired of keeping in touch with humans, seeing all of them leaving the tower and telling stories of the outside world. He felt bored and sad, having nothing to do for a long time. Now lying on the floor, looking at his attribute window, he notices a change he hasn't seen in a long time. A message saying the loop has been removed appears. He quickly stands up, holding the screen with his hands, disbelieving what he was reading, his eyes shining at that message. He shouts so loudly that it can be heard on the other side of the tower. He prepares and jumps, destroying several floors with a leap in the excitement of going home. We return to the program. The host says that the fastest conquest of the tower was about 10 months. She asks if the 18th group of hunters can beat this record. The guild leaders say it's a difficult answer. The number of hunters is always diverse, and there are various factors that can occur. Depending on the strength of the unit, it is also important to know what kind of attack is best made, and this will depend on their techniques. Besides all this, things start to get truly complicated after floor 51. Since every 10 floors, a high-ranking boss appears. From then on, luck is no longer on your side. In the tower, we see an ogre who is one of these high-ranking bosses, scared by an earthquake that is happening. Rising from the ground in front of him, Wookim appears with white eyes of rage. He goes through the floors of the tower, exploding it. The explosions are so strong that they can be seen from the outside. Finally reaching floor 99, he faces the boss again, but this time with an unstoppable look on his face and with the excitement that he will finally go home. He hits the boss's chest, killing him instantly. From the outside, it looks like the tower has just faced a war. Explosions, cracks, and fire are seen everywhere. Near the tower, a monitoring base was established by the Korean Hunters Association. Its goal, besides assisting new hunters, is to count how long they take to complete it. The two frightened men look at the portal forming, saying that a new record has emerged while making a call. The man in a suit tells the other to prepare for the arrival of the survivors. However, only one person comes out of the portal, walking calmly. Wookim faces the outside world. Seeing countless buildings on all sides, the only thing he can do is laugh. The man from earlier arrives, congratulating him for successfully leaving the tutorial. The protagonist, astonished by the world around him, looks at the man, asking if he really managed to get out of the tower. And with tearful eyes, he screams with happiness. The man looks for his name on the list, but cannot find it among the participants of the 18th group. Going through all the old groups, he arrives at the first tutorial group and finds his name. The man is shocked, looking at him while saying that he is the advanced player Woo Kim, who is still jumping with happiness for having left, does not even hear what he says. The first to be summoned in the tower officially escaped after 12 years. A week later, a crowd of people gather to enter a building. The reporter from Getting to Know Hunters is at the Tutorial Center of Korea, where the hunters of the 18th group will have their first ranking evaluation. The 18th is a special case for having reduced the time of the world record for completing the tower. They attract the attention of the entire world. The reporter says that there is also another rumor circulating, the fact that the advanced player has finally left the tower. In the VIP waiting area of the tutorial tower, the guild leaders gather. The woman asks if he really left, and the other replies that there is only one person with the name Wookim who entered in 2006. She thinks he must be with the same appearance as when they first met, since in the tower appetite, sleep, everything disappears, even aging. The other guild leader wonders what kind of monster he has become after so much time there. Then the ranking evaluation begins. The novice hunters gather using basic equipment given by them, except for one person who is eating Doritos in the back of the room. The protagonist, who ate all the Doritos on the shelves, catches the attention of all the hunters there. He asks why they are using that equipment, and the man replies that they were distributed during the morning and are necessary so that they do not fail the evaluation test. He did not even see the equipment arriving because he was sleeping. The evaluation begins, and everyone there gets serious. A door opens and they are sent out. The brightness of the door is so intense that it makes the protagonist squint, wondering what will happen this time. We are introduced to the ranking evaluation labyrinth, a massive metallic building where a group of people gather at the door. A man in a suit welcomes them. David, an A-rank hunter, will oversee the exam. He says that the exam is being watched by the entire world at this moment, and the hunters, using protective gear and their respective weapons, prepare somewhat nervously. Seeing this, David says they don't need to be so nervous since this is like a walk in the park compared to the tutorial. As David speaks, the protagonist yawns in the back, bored with the situation. David uses his phone to present the first test. With just one click, he causes a huge sound and a slight tremor, explaining that there are various complicated situations they will go through as hunters, and this will be one of them. Behind him, several scattered pieces of concrete move simultaneously, forming a labyrinth. This labyrinth is full of traps. He previously said it would be a walk in the park, but in reality, they will need all their abilities to complete it. The countdown for the test begins, and the hunters get ready. As they all advance into the labyrinth, David is pleased that the new hunters are disciplined and thinks they will bring good results. As he reminisces about the times when he was a beginner, the protagonist comes to talk to him, asking if he just needs to get to the other side. David looks him up and down, wondering who this man is. He wonders if he is a novice and doesn't understand why he isn't wearing the provided equipment. Seeing the protagonist so relaxed, he wonders if he is taking the exam seriously. Face to face, he asks if the protagonist thinks the exam is trivial, and the protagonist tells him to lecture the noisy crowd running around. David gets angry with Woo Kim's arrogance, who is impressed with David's courage to confront him. Woo Kim proposes a bet. If he can finish in less than 20 seconds, David will have to pay him 100,000. He seems hesitant to accept the bet, his ego bruised when the protagonist asks if he is scared, raising the bet to 1 million. Before he finishes speaking, the protagonist runs to the labyrinth and touches one of its walls. He is impressed by how much a hunter can earn and thinks that being a hunter is actually a very good job. Seeing him prepare a punch on the wall, David wonders what he's going to do, and the guild leaders watching the broadcast are also curious about the situation. He hits the wall with such force that the solid, massive wall seems to turn into water. The impact is so great that it shines, causing a chain of destruction in all the walls behind it. He turns to David and says the exit is on the other side. He created a forced exit, winning the bet, and people are astonished by the insanity shown, not even knowing how they will measure the ranking of this thing. The guild masters who fought with him in the past wonder if he has always been this way, and like a happy child who won a candy, he bounces out saying he won 1 million. But when he sees the damage he caused, he wonders if they will charge him to pay for the damage. On the eve of the decisive exam for the hunters, the editorial office of Live Hunter magazine buzzes with speculation about the enigmatic veteran player. Information is scarce, as he is a figure from the past. And there is a newcomer, Kang-Yun Lee, who perhaps deserves more attention than the veteran. Lee, an expert traditional martial arts fighter, is the focus of the journalists who prepare a piece about him while questioning the existence of the veteran player. Kang-Yun Lee, now in the midst of the exam, declares his desire to become a legend as he positions himself for combat. While others retreat from the threat of a monster, he stands firm, ready for the confrontation. Sword in hand, he faces danger, willing to risk everything for his dream. A kendo master with a history of victories and titles, Lee is the most formidable hunter in his group. He believes that a striking first impression can pave his way to success. He recalls the meteoric rise of the protagonist in the tower, an unbeatable warrior who overcomes all obstacles. Yun Lee, a witness to that journey, does not understand how he was overshadowed, while the protagonist, triumphant, proclaims his return home. Now in the classification exam, Yun Lee and the others watch astonished at the destruction caused. For safety reasons, the exam is interrupted, and everyone is instructed to wait for further directions. Behind the scenes, the filming crew desperately searches for clear images of the event. The cameras, previously focused on Yun Lee, ignored the true protagonist, who unintentionally became the center of attention. The director, seeing the hero on the screen, announces the emergence of a new star. Yun Lee, bitter, contemplates the sleeping protagonist, while the hunters around discuss the explosion, unaware of the veteran player's presence among them. Yun Lee, however, sees an opportunity to reclaim the spotlight. The organizing committee announces that the next exam will start soon, waking the protagonist from his sleep. Determined not to be overshadowed by the veteran player, Yun Lee heads to the disciplinary exam, facing monsters. He unsheathes his sword and confronts an ogre. Thanks to magic stones and advanced technology, virtual training becomes a spectacle, where the goal is to eliminate as many monsters as possible in a limited time. Yun Lee displays his electric skills, impressing everyone with the lightning emanating from his blade. With the arrival of a prodigy, he executes a series of lightning-fast attacks, taking down 78 creatures and achieving the highest score among the competitors. Spectators, following the broadcast, comment that if it weren't for the veteran player, Lee would have been the undisputed champion. Wookim passes by him, yawning, indifferent to the commotion, while the guild masters watch curiously to see how he will fare after so much time. The exam resumes, and Lee has 120 seconds to face a horde of holographic monsters that appear around him. The onlookers watch the screen intently. The protagonist, even surrounded by monsters, is extremely calm. The countdown ends, and the monsters begin to attack him. Moving swiftly like a bullet, he explodes the head of a monster. His movements are so fast that the cameras can't keep up. The horde of orcs is quickly eliminated. To the observers, it seems as if he has vanished, and the monsters' heads begin to explode. Not even the guild leaders can follow his movements, wondering if he is using some technique. This hypothesis is dismissed since he has just come out of the tutorial. Watching the slow-motion footage closely, it's clear that he's simply approaching the monsters and attacking casually without using any technique. This monstrous power and speed leave the guild masters frightened, wondering what on earth he did during his time in the tower. When the time is up, standing there in the room, he is surrounded by bodies. He has managed to kill a total of 248 monsters alone, breaking the old record. People watching his performance on the internet comment on how incredible he was. Some think he used magic to move that way. Yun Li, reading these comments, smashes his phone, deeply annoyed with people talking about Kim and not him. Thirsty for hatred, he strikes the wall of his room several times. Yu tried so hard and even resorted to dirty methods to improve his ranking, was completely surpassed by a random person. In the waiting room, a woman shows him a list, asking what it is about. She explains that it is a list of guilds that would like to meet him. This woman in front of him is the head of intelligence of the Hunters Association, Alice. She explains that many guilds are interested in having him due to the potential he showed. The protagonist glances at the list, understanding that this important woman is not there just for that. He asks what she came to do. She replies that she is there for personal reasons. In addition to being able to see the hunter who turned the world upside down personally, she suggests that he join the Heirs Guild, handing him the contract right after. With his arrival at the guild, his fixed remuneration would be 10 billion won. Because of the exorbitant amount, he asks if Korea is going through some economic crisis or if the currency has devalued a lot. She explains that in fact the economy has been improving drastically, as the lands that the protagonist used to live in are now costing about 1.3 billion. He is obviously frightened by this information. Things have changed a lot since he entered the tower. She continues saying that the Heirs Guild is very interested in him and that they are willing to pay up to double that to rehire him. He wonders if someone from the government could be recommending a guild. She says that this was a personal request from the Heirs Guild scout. She adds that he doesn't need to decide now, but is interrupted by the protagonist. He has already decided that he does not plan to be tied to any guild, throwing the contract on the table. At first, she thinks he is joking, but he continues firmly imposing his idea. After leaving the room, he reflects on the proposal. In this world is give and take. They did not offer a fortune of 10 billion for no reason. If he accepted, he would have to work. Lying in his bed with a pile of snacks on the side, the vagabond says he doesn't like to work and wants to live a comfortable and carefree life. Resuming the conversation, she asks if he doesn't plan to be a hunter, but he warns her, explaining that even without guild connections, there are hunters who work alone. She finds him quite arrogant, but still says that if he changes his mind, he could call the number on the card. Lying in his bed, he is angry for having taken so long to find out about mercenary hunters. If he had known this before, he wouldn't have wasted his time taking the hunter's tests and would have taken the opportunity to sleep. He glances at the list of guilds and recognizes some of the names there. 5 days later, in a Japanese restaurant, he doesn't recognize the people he's talking to. The three masters of Korea's most famous guilds are in front of him. They were his old companions 12 years ago. Seokwon, who was his age before, is now an old man. The shy boy Si-yeon has now turned into a handsome guy, and Soo-yeon, who was just a stubborn elementary school student, has practically become another person. He recalls how Si-yeon used to hide behind him, leaving him quite embarrassed. He also talks about the time Soo-yeon wet herself when she saw the Banksy on the 14th floor being threatened with death right there. He's happy to meet his friends again and enjoys his sushi, wondering how he managed to live 12 years without it. They remember the day they captured the Triton, and he kept humming saying he wanted to eat sushi. He even cut its tail off to make sashimi. It's clear that he's always been a lunatic in that tower. His friends, recalling his past, say it has become a habit to hear stories about him inside the tower. Curious, Kim asks about some of these stories, finding out that he's practically a celebrity, and that the things done in the tower are mentioned on TV to this day, leaving him a little worried. The ideas he had to kill boredom are now on TV. He wonders which ones are there, since he did a lot of things. Many of the things he did there were embarrassing. Once he completed the dungeon naked, another time he completed it doing a goblin cosplay. They say the most famous stories are of a time when he defeated a boss while dancing, and the day he defeats all the monsters using only his feet from the 1st to the 10th floor. He is relieved that the most compromising stories remain there. While eating his sushi, he explains that these were things he felt like doing at the time. His old companions, who already considered him a monster after the evaluation test, now only confirm it. He says that being trapped in that tower made him do a lot of things, even adopting a disciple. He didn't remember the time exactly, but it was when he spent a lot of time between floors 50 and 60, finding a boy who was abandoned in the tower. At the time, he was thinking of creating a martial style, so using a large cloak and skull mask, he introduces himself to the boy, acting like a mysterious monk. After that, he started training the boy, making him balance jars with water while standing on one foot, ordering him to lift extremely heavy weights and saying that he had to concentrate the chakra in his abdomen to be able to break a pillar. But all that was a fraud. The only thing he did was use brute force. Reflecting now, he feels sorry for the boy and is glad he wore a mask, definitely not wanting to meet him. He asks how things were in the outside world, and they continue the long conversation. Returning home, lying in his bed, he opens the status window again, no longer finding the message of the tutorial limit reached. His age has also returned to 24, as if he really lost 12 years of his life. His goal now is just to get a good amount of money and live a peaceful and quiet life until he dies. But even though many messages have disappeared, one continued, the one that says the infinite cycle has been removed. Opening the message, he discovers a quest, ordering him to kill 3 bosses from these respective dungeons. At the same time, he is called from outside his room. Opening the door, the doorman says that some people from the Heirs Guild have come to visit him. The protagonist said he is not interested, but the doorman insists. Seeing that they won't stop until it's made extremely clear that he doesn't want to join, he follows the guard to where the recruiter is waiting. There, sitting on the sofa, a man in a suit. The guard behind him waits. Kim is direct to the point, saying that he made it extremely clear that he didn't want to join a guild. The man introduces himself as Byung Lokang, the human resources manager of the Heirs Guild. He asks if the protagonist can really make progress as a hunter without a guild, saying that there will be no unnecessary suffering when joining Ares. Kim understands his intentions, asking if they really went to his house to threaten him. The security guard gets angry with Kim's impudence, but is stopped by Bayon, who advises him not to do anything foolish. Kim says he knows their guild well, saying they are a bunch of scum who have monopolized half of Korea's dungeons. During his conversation with his former colleagues, he discovered that to enter a dungeon, he needs a permission ticket. The Ares Guild has monopolized 66% of all the country's dungeons, from the A-rank dungeons, which are perfect for farming, to the D-rank dungeons, which are good for guiding beginners. Deep down, they leave others with only two options: pay their expensive ticket or join the guild. The security guard punches the table, trying to frighten Kim, and again suggests that he think better about the proposal, since they can end his life if he doesn't accept. The security guard throws the table at the wall. This man is an A-rank hunter. He asks if the MC has a chance against him. With a smile on his face, he continues to provoke them, sitting carelessly on the sofa. Kim stands up and takes off his sandal, saying he's going to teach them good manners. The angry security guard charges at him, but with a slap in the face with the sandal, he throws him against the wall. The other looks frightened at his friend, while the protagonist calmly walks up to him. Before going up to him, Bayon thinks that he does have good potential, but he's just a big fish in a small aquarium. The security guard, who trained directly with the Ares Guild, was prepared to bring him to his knees, or at least that was the plan. Now buried in the wall, he is completely unconscious, and his superior is confused by the situation. He wonders how Kim is so strong even without using magic, while the protagonist approaches, asking if he knows what he hates the most. The man cornered against the wall is in despair as the protagonist continues speaking. The thing he hates the most is when people try to threaten him. With a malicious smile on his face, he strikes Bayon. Later that night, Kim is at a friend's house talking about the incident, saying that maybe he overreacted and that the guys from Ares are relentless in their revenge. But the protagonist is not afraid of them at all. Sian continues explaining that no one messes with them because they tend to hold grudges, making threats, preventing joining guilds, and silencing them within dungeons. He says what the protagonist did was kind of brutal and offers him to join the guild, which is refused. The protagonist now has a plan in mind and asks if he has heard of the Adoron laboratory. He was curious during those 12 years, why was he the only one who couldn't escape the tower? His questions were full of anger and resentment. Who was the bastard who did this? Why was he in prison for 12 years? He thinks that if he can unravel these secrets, he will find a responsible party, then make them suffer as he suffered. The Adoron laboratory is a C-rank dungeon. His boss is a half-cyborg mad scientist who loves experimenting on others. It is known to be a good place for beginners to get stronger. Sigan is not sure if they will allow his entry, as this dungeon is also owned by the Ares Guild. Indignant, Kim asks if there isn't a law to prevent monopoly, but Sidian explains that the government doesn't have time to deal with hunters' problems. He adds that the reason they can kill people in dungeons without being caught is that the police can't investigate there, categorizing them as accidental deaths. The protagonist decides to invade the place, but Sian immediately contradicts him, saying they watch the place 24 hours a day. He decides to confront them head-on, again being reprimanded, as doing so will make the guild become his enemy. Remembering what he did to the last two people from the guild, he says it's a bit late to think about that. At the Ares Guild headquarters, they are discussing their expansion to China, Russia, and Japan. Pleased with the progress of their expansion, Seon-hyuk is an S-rank hunter and director of the Korean branch of the guild. He says that the time needed to expand to other countries doesn't matter, as long as they have always been ahead of the competition. Comparing it to when you're running away from a dungeon boss where you don't need to be faster than him, just faster than the guy next to you. One of his employees comes to deliver the level analysis of Hyeon Kim's status. Analyzing the footage of his movements in the tutorial, they use a machine that accurately measures people's status. Seeing his status, he is impressed as they are bizarrely strong. He asks if they managed to recruit him, finding out that they didn't. He says the guild is better off without him. Recruiting a guy like the protagonist would be a huge benefit to the guild. With his skills, he could make incredible progress in labyrinths and dungeons, but he might not be satisfied and go after his position as director. He tells them to forget about recruiting him and to teach him a lesson. As he was leaving the room, he is approached by a red-haired man with tied hair. This man says they are having problems at the Adoron laboratory. In the Chienbo Mountains, a young girl asks the dungeon guards to let her in to hunt. They say that to be able to enter, she needs a ticket, and if she needs to hunt so much, it's better to go to the labyrinth, which is free. He approaches the girl, who seems to be an archer. She asks to let her pass just this once, and looking closely at the girl, he says he might change his mind if she gives him her number. Seeing this scene, the protagonist approaches. The man says there is no bathroom there, and if he needs to shit, it's better to go in the woods. The MC retorts, saying he needs to enter the dungeon. The man thinks it's some kind of joke, as it's a really dangerous place. Kim continues to approach. The security guard says that if he doesn't leave now, he's going to get beaten up. Already out of patience, he says he's waited too long while taking off his sandal. The men are confused by that, while the MC calls the two of them. The man thinks he's some crazy guy and tries to send him away. When he approaches, he is hit by the protagonist's sandal, being thrown several meters back. His other friend turns to understand what happened, while the protagonist approaches from behind. As he overknitted a bit and the sandal exploded, he tells the guy to hand over his shoes. With a threatening look on his face, he says that if he doesn't hand them over now, he'll end up like the other one. Now wearing shoes that look more like a piece of armor, he said they are super light and comfortable. This because the man paid 5 million wons for the weight reduction magic. Saying he's not a bad guy, he hands his sandals to him. The girl who was there says she's leaving, while the desolate man looks at the protagonist's exploded sandals. At the Seoul Guild headquarters, Yeonli yells at Hinan, asking how he let the protagonist leave like that. Hyun complains about her yelling at him and says that Kim is not someone who can be stopped. The only thing he could do was warn about the Heirs Guild. They remember the time they were in the dungeon. Normally the protagonist is not the type to cause trouble and let things go. But if someone messes with him, the story changes, everyone will see his true disturbed personality. Kim is shown taking a look at his new shoes, while his companions say they shouldn't worry so much about him. After discussing the Heirs Guild, he inquired about his status, even leaving Young startled to hear it. Inside the dungeon, Adoran is looking for new test subjects to continue his examination. A group of adventurers is hidden, observing him. They wonder what to do as the Heirs Guild doesn't care about the boss since he doesn't generate much profit. Since they are already there, they recommend that they should take him down, but the young lady of the group questions if they could do that with their skill levels. They did some research before entering the dungeon, discovering that the boss has high defense but low attack. If they can tire him out enough, they will be able to defeat him. Determined, they prepare to face the boss, but end up seeing a man walking up to him. The group wonders who that guy is who's face to face with the boss. 12 years ago, his teammates found out what Kim went through as a child in an orphanage. He was told not to cause trouble and try not to show that he had no parents. After his parents died, his cousin put him in an orphanage and stole his inheritance, perhaps having lost his faith in humanity. Even though he is usually fine, if someone tries to control or pressure him, he will not be able to hold back his wicked grudge. The giant half-cyborg monster wonders what to experiment with first while making sparks with his blades. The protagonist tells him to stop, but he continues laughing at the situation, wondering why he should stop. With just one kick, he destroys the boss's body, leaving everyone shocked by that. Looking at his status window again now, one of the missions is complete, the next one being in the forest village. The group of adventurers recognizes him. He is the #1 topic in the hunter community, the advanced player. In the basement of the Heirs Guild, the lackey of the guild boss is talking to Chinon Mayang, the guild's management chief, showing him the protagonist's evaluation, leaving him impressed that someone who just came out of the tutorial has 2 B rank attributes. Mayang says he is practically a monster and asks if they want him to take care of this guy. They already know that the protagonist invaded one of their dungeons and comments that it must have been humiliating for the director. If the protagonist is really that strong, maybe he won't be able to just teach him a lesson, having to kill him, but he will do his best to be discreet since his boss is busy with things in China. Things are quite complicated as 2 years ago, when the Pado Guild was formed, it practically monopolized half of China's dungeons. The guild leader behind the success has only been out of the tower for 4 years, and all the high-ranked members are also famous for their monstrous abilities. But what is most impressive is that the identity of the guild leader and S-rank hunter is unknown. Since they are very busy with these things in China, they do not plan to make much effort to take care of the protagonist. Ike, who is taking pictures, is impressed with how much technology has advanced, taking a picture of his friend and being impressed that he can play games on his cell phone. He says that the dungeon he intends to face is managed by his guild, but the boss is not there at the moment. Kim indignantly asks why, and he replies that he was defeated a few weeks ago. The system in real life works differently than in the tower. Their monsters take about a day to regenerate, but in real life, they follow different rules. Common monsters regenerate all the time, but the boss takes some time to come back. The protagonist is scared, thinking he will have to wait a whole month to be able to defeat him, but is reassured with the news that there are only 2 or 3 days left for the respawn. He asks when he is going to register his ranking at the Hunters Association, since with that ranking he will get some advantages with sponsors and money. When he talks about money, the protagonist gets excited, asking how much he can earn. He explains that it depends on the rank. For example, B ranks can earn up to 1.3 million, while higher ranks can earn much more. He himself earns 7 million wons. The next day, Hyonu goes to the Hunters Association with Si-Hyen. The man at the reception asks if he is there to register, asking the protagonist's name. As soon as he finds out that he is the guy who escaped after 12 years, he remembers that Vitter was looking for him. Finding him quite arrogant for a rookie, he hopes his score will be at most B rank. He hands a box to the protagonist, the Eye of Truth. It will measure his status grade and show it in the hologram next to him. When Hyonu holds the box and the hologram appears, the man looks shocked at the status shown there. He screams, saying it doesn't make sense for him to have those statuses, and again we see news of Hyonu spreading. People on the internet comment that except for magic, all his statuses are a rank, and that there is no one like that in the world. Returning by car, Hyonu is impressed with how quickly the news spreads on the internet. Si-Hyen says it's inevitable since besides his monstrous statuses, he also caused a commotion inside the Heirs Guild's dungeon. Si-Hyen warns that the Heirs Guild has probably already gathered enough information about him, and that after today's warning they won't stand still about it, while telling the protagonist to be careful he is playing on his cell phone. He starts laughing, showing his cell phone. He says that on the game's loading screen there's a hunter making a ridiculous pose full of cheap effects. Si-Hyen, with a serious look on his face, says that's him, leaving an awkward atmosphere in the car. He asks if Si-Hyen doesn't have anything to do, since the other guild masters are always busy and he seems to always have free time. He said he is as busy as they are and just took a day off to help him, but the protagonist doesn't believe much in that talk. Returning to the basement of the Heirs Guild, 2 there are impressed with the protagonist's strength. Mayang says they don't need to worry, since he called Chinandang the hunter who is about to become S-rank in China. Already in the forest village, Hyonu and Si-Hyen are waiting for the boss to regenerate. As they go deeper into the forest, a man a few meters away watches them with a smile on his face. The protagonist asks who the guy walking with them is. Si-Hyen explains that he's an assistant to gather materials. The protagonist doesn't quite understand what materials these are, but Si-Hyen explains that the materials dropped by the boss could be sold for 20 or 35 million wons. The protagonist, startled, asks what someone would use those materials for. Steven understands that someone dressed like him would hardly understand their use, as they are used to make weapons and armor. The assistant asks to record the raid, explaining that money can be made from streaming, and Yahello, a top-notch mercenary, wants to earn 80% of the profit. They continue walking deeper into the forest. Steven hands him a map, saying that further into the forest, it becomes a labyrinth. The protagonist, having no idea how to read the map, throws it away as he approaches a large tree. He turns to the assistant and tells him to record well as he prepares to punch it. His punch is so powerful that it destroys a large part of the forest, creating a path to the boss, a two-headed ogre. The assistant is impressed with Yahello's abilities, recording and following him to the boss. With a leap, the protagonist reaches the boss's height, dodging his attack and climbing onto his shoulder. He kicks the boss, making him fall, and climbs on top of him. Under the moonlight, in a few seconds, he eliminated a dungeon boss. While the assistant is happy that his video will go viral, the man in the tree watches them with a malevolent smile on his face. This man is Qiangyang, who is analyzing the protagonist's capabilities, agreeing that he truly lives up to the name of advanced player. His physical statuses are overwhelming without the need for magic or abilities. However, it was quite easy to see how to defeat him. Tomorrow will be the day he invades the swamp, a moment to attack him. The protagonist, already there, feels that something is strange. When he receives a message on his cell phone, it was Sueon, who is worried about him. The protagonist continues to advance. He does not fear the Heirs Guild or anything else, since he is strong. The day before, Sueon questions why he wants to enter the territories of the Heirs Guild. He replies that he has some matters to deal with there. She insists, asking what these matters are, but he prefers not to reveal them. She asks if he is doing this just to go against Ares, and he replies that there is a bit of that. Sueon sighs. She knows she doesn't need to worry about him since she heard what his abilities are, but she still feels concerned, telling him to avoid encountering the guild members. As the swamp is an A-rank dungeon, Ares must also be waiting to invade it as soon as the boss regenerates. The protagonist looks and thanks her for the advice, but he certainly won't follow it. Already in the dungeon, he encounters one of the guild members who threatens him with his knife. He yells, trying to intimidate, while the protagonist remembers his friend's words. Seeing the man in an attacking position, he asks if they never learn. As soon as he arrives, they start disrespecting him, then they get beaten for not taking him seriously. The protagonist, already tired, says it's always the same thing, irritating the guy who charges at him. An explosion is seen while the protagonist calmly walks away. Walking on the soft ground of the swamp, he is observed by a monster in the water, which as soon as it detects that he has come close enough, goes after him. In front of him, a crocodile over 20 meters long, he is impressed by its size. Remembering his friend's words, he knows its hide is strong and resistant, and that its teeth are worth a lot of money. The protagonist smiles malevolently as he charges at the boss, hitting him squarely. He says he will kill it quickly and loot everything, but is surprised when the monster tries to flee. He holds it by its two tails, not letting it enter the water. The desperate monster hears the protagonist talking about an attack called the Giant Swing, while being violently spun in the air. He throws it at a mountain, but impressively it survives and comes back to attack him. Seeing the boss's murderous aura, the protagonist asks if he wants to be beaten more while being watched by Qiangyang. The crocodile attacks him. Yahello prepares to finish it off, but his legs are caught by shining chains. Qiangyang, who attacked him unawares, says it is time to die as the boss opens its mouth to attack him. He quickly uses his hands to escape the boss's attack, and when he looks back at his legs, there are shining red chains holding him. Confused and not knowing what it is, Qiangyang on top of a rock says it's called magic chains, and it's perfect to use on someone like him who has no magic. Sitting on the ground, the protagonist asks who he is, and the man comes down from the rock introducing himself. He was sent by the Heirs Guild to deal with him personally. The protagonist, dirty with earth, says he is an assassin from the guild. While he confirms it, he says he was impressed with his brute strength since he managed to throw the crocodile with extreme ease. He is aware of how powerful he is, but trapped in those chains, he won't be able to move. Yahello tries to break free but realizes the chains don't move. He explains that these are not ordinary chains but magical chains, meaning that to escape, he has to use magic. This plan was specifically developed for him, who just came out of the tower and has no magic. Yahello asks if he's really in trouble, leaving Qiangyang stressed. He says everyone is like that. Once caught off guard, they act as if it's nothing. The protagonist, continuing to act as if it's nothing, leaves him even more pissed off, drawing his sword and going to attack Yahello. As soon as his sword makes contact with him, he activates an ability causing a great explosion. He thinks he has managed to kill him, but when the smoke clears, Yahello is perfectly fine, wondering if something was supposed to happen. Leaving him totally scared, the attack had no effect on him. He tries to attack again, but is surprised by a punch throwing him far away. Yahello approaches, saying he should have restrained his entire body. The confused man asks how this is possible as the chains dissolve. After that, Yahello breaks the tree he's tied to and holds it. Since he's an assassin, he knows what's going to happen now as we see the crocodile. He is thrown onto the crocodile, killing it instantly. The mission completion notification appears in front of him, stating that the status window will be updated. Back at the Heirs Guild, Mayong discovers that Qiangyang was killed by the protagonist. The tree he was tied to has already been swallowed by the swamp, not even allowing them to recover the remains. Qiangyang was a hunter with 2 S-rank statuses. Along with 7 abilities, someone so strong lost to Yahello. Mayong is worried and stressed at the same time, thinking about how he will deal with him. Back home, Yahello lies on the sofa, thoughtful. He sighs and then opens his status window. New things have been added. He gained the ability to scan statuses and also an invitation from the system to be a temporary guardian. He doesn't understand it very well, but is happy that something has changed. He thought he would complete the mission and receive some information from the tower, but what he received was an invitation that expires in 2 hours. Siyun arrives home asking if he has eaten. Hayoma takes the opportunity to check his new ability. Using the status scan, he can check another person's status, but he ends up not seeing much information due to the low level of the ability. He gets angry, saying it's useless, making Siyun think it was about him. Sitting on the sofa, he waits for the system to update so he can find out something about the tower. When the clock strikes 12, everything around him goes dark, and he is teleported to a room. In this room, a woman waits for him, sitting at the table in front of him. With an empty look on her face, she greets him, saying she is his assistant Ave. She says that as long as he is alive, they will see each other frequently. The protagonist gets excited, thinking he will finally have some of his questions answered. He will finally understand why he was trapped in the tower. Face to face with Ave, he waits for her to say something. He asks if she isn't going to give an explanation and ends up discovering that she only answers things. As his first question, he asks who imprisoned him in the tutorial tower, but she cannot answer because his status scan is too low. He gets angry because to have his questions answered, he needs to increase his scan level. He continues asking some questions, but she doesn't answer any, leaving him so stressed that he flicks her on the head. Not knowing who she is or why she brought him, she can't even answer his questions. Ave says there is one thing she can tell him. The Guardians are those who defend. He breathes and gives up, asking what information he needs to know. She explains that as he is currently a temporary guardian, when he moves up in rank, he will get more detailed answers to his questions. He asks how to become an official guardian. She replies that in 5 days, a rift will appear in the region where he lives. In its deepest part, you will find a key to increase the scan level. By getting this key, he becomes a true guardian. Back home, he is thoughtful about what happened, thinking he will do everything necessary to get information. The next day, he meets with the guild masters, explaining their rift will appear. Everyone gathered there is scared by the information since a rift means imminent disasters. Back at the Heirs Guild headquarters, the director punches the table after hearing the report that one of the company's strongest guys was killed. He is extremely pissed and tells them not to spare expenses to have his revenge. He orders them to find a mercenary stronger than the previous one and wants to see Hayonu dead. After eliminating him, he will turn his attention to the Pado Guild, as its members are being eliminated by a special masked force. Then we see the protagonist enchanted with a ring, a small item that costs more than 2 billion wands and is found in labyrinths. The protagonist asks what the difference is between a labyrinth and a dungeon. They explain that in labyrinths you can find artifacts like this ring, but dungeons only get resources from monsters or magic crystal stones. They say that this ring is enchanted, comparing it to those in games. Using his ability, he discovers that the ring is an A-class item with pyrokinesis ability, but he can't see much due to the low level of the ability. Thinking his ability is crap, he thinks that when he finishes the things he has to do, it's better to visit a labyrinth. He remembers the conversation he had with Avi and asks if they know about a rift, alerting everyone when they hear this. Basically, a rift is when the ground opens up out of nowhere, and an endless number of monsters start coming out of there. Those who witnessed it personally called it the Gates of Hell. Ave, who spoke so calmly about it, made the protagonist consider that it was nothing serious, pissing him off with that. He asks what would happen if a rift opened in Korea. Everyone becomes thoughtful, as they would probably be able to stop a low-ranking rift, but it would turn the entire area into a wasteland. Some guilds would try to combat the rift, while the Heirs Guild would likely send a team of nobodies and claim they helped defend against the rift. The protagonist looks at the meat on his plate and tells them to eat plenty and rest well for the coming days, leaving them somewhat confused. A few days later at the airport, some people notice a small earthquake happening. The earthquake intensifies and the ground begins to crack. A red rift slowly starts to open, growing to a huge size. Meanwhile, in a distant castle, a hooded man approaches a huge circular table, saying that the 9th class has awakened. The man seated at that table asks if it has been fully awakened. He explains that not yet, but it will fully awaken soon. The timing couldn't be better. This man with a demonic appearance looks at Hayonu, waiting to see what he is capable of. Back at the airport, people are on the ground, frightened by the earthquake. Some manage to stand, but others simply fall to their knees. A news helicopter flying over the area warns people to evacuate due to the appearance of a rift. The airport was blocked and hunters were sent there, but rivers of monsters continue to emerge from the rift. The situation is getting worse and worse, like a war between humans and beasts. They relentlessly advance on humans, some desperate can do nothing, but a team member uses a skill to trap some monsters and uses the time to eliminate them. He, as an experienced hunter, orders the rookie to get up and keep fighting, but even killing several monsters, he realizes that the situation is getting worse as reinforcements do not arrive. No matter how much they kill, more always keep appearing. They have to attack the correct location where the rift opened. The man hears a noise, and when he looks, he sees a giant skeleton approaching. This is an A-rank monster, making people lose hope. When the skeleton is about to attack, the man orders everyone to run while trying to protect the attack. But even defending himself, the impact is so great that it throws him far away, stopping in a car. The skeleton approaches, face to face with him, ready to deliver the final blow, but at the last second, it is stopped by Hayonu. With his hands in his pockets, he kicks its head, breaking it. The people that recognize him, the casual black clothes he wears, immediately identify him. The advanced player from the news is in front of them. Seeing the damage he caused to the skeleton, he opens the status window, realizing he needs to go deeper into the airport to find the key. People approach impressed that he knocked down a skeleton with one blow, but because of the momentary distraction, they are attacked by the order of monsters. Seeing this scene, Hayonu thinks he can lend a hand until help arrives. He He takes the staff that the giant skeleton used, jumping and spinning a few times in the air, then throws the staff at the pile of monsters that were there, killing several of them. People look at that destruction and feel hope that they can be saved with him. But the protagonist leaves the scene, leaving the rest with them, making them fight and survive until help arrives. Even fighting incessantly, they begin to get tired, and the monsters do not end. The general says that if they give up now, it will be a massacre for the people who are outside. In a moment of carelessness, he is attacked from behind, but the monster is killed in a single sword blow. The leader of the Seoul Guild arrives to help. This time with his sword and samurai clothes, he is prepared and with all the members of his guild. A noise from the other side of a pile of cars catches his attention. A dead monster falls next to them. Suein, along with the members of her guild, appears, and a little later Seokwon also arrives. With all the guilds present, he thinks he is finally safe. Suein asks about Hyonu, who should have arrived first than them. The man says that the advanced player has just entered the rift, an attitude that his friends already expected due to his impatience. Now all gather, they begin the counterattack against the monsters. Seokwon uses a skill to strengthen his shield. Taking the lead of the artillery, he advances to the herd of monsters, eliminating several of them. Singhan, using fast and precise movements, also fights against the monsters, while Sueon, who uses lightning magic, throws energy spheres that explode in a burst of light, burning the monsters. Hyonu is observing the abyss. According to what Ave said, he needs to reach the deepest part. He sees that there's a path that the monsters use to climb, and looking around a bit, he finds a car. An idea comes to his head. He rips the doors off the car and uses them as two shields, jumping into the horde of monsters. A goblin that's passing by tries to warn his companions, but it's no use. The real monster lands in the middle of the horde, leaving them scared. Like a buffalo, he advances down the path, throwing the monsters in all directions. Some fall back into the abyss, making him realize that it's not so far to get down there. He throws the car doors he was holding and jumps into the abyss, landing on a pile of monsters. Reaching the bottom of the rift, he sees a red monster approaching. It looks different from the others, stronger and with crystals scattered over its body. The Crimson Climber is a monster that holds the key the protagonist needs. He immediately advances to take it from him, throwing a punch towards the monster, who manages to dodge and counterattack, throwing him far away. The startled protagonist has no time to think as the monster advances on him. Hyonu manages to dodge and counterattack with a kick and a punch to its face, knocking the monster to the ground. It says some things while pointing at the protagonist, who doesn't understand and continues to go after it. The monster manages to stop his punch with one hand, attacking right after, and in this battle, the protagonist is clearly struggling to face the enemy. Noticing a cut on his belly, he wonders if he should use that ability, standing up and saying that the monster is now in trouble. Without understanding, the protagonist begins to prepare a fighting stance like a true martial artist. Back when Hyonu was still trapped in the tower, he remembers that in martial arts stories, people escape their trials after achieving enlightenment through spiritual training. He knew this was just movie nonsense, but he continued training, as his hope of achieving enlightenment and leaving the tower was stronger. At first, he just imitated martial arts he saw on TV, but it was a waste of time since his punches did nothing against the monsters. He thought it was all a waste, but at one point, he managed to decapitate a monster with just one punch. The status he gained from clearing the tower hundreds of times turned something fake into reality. He tried to forget those days, as they were very embarrassing. While preparing, the monster attacks him. Even seeing a punch coming, he remains calm and uses a technique called Emperor's Fury, violently punching the monster's head. The attack is so powerful that it opens a hole in the nearby rocks. Seeing that destruction, he is glad that there is no one around and that this habit of shouting the names of techniques is very embarrassing. He takes the key, which updates his mission. In 3 days, he will meet Eve again, and he thinks it's better that she has answers to give this time. He observes a small drone flying over his head, its footage being shown on a big screen at the Heirs Guild. They are shocked by this display of power. The boss asks if he is really at a rank. His assistant says these are the official results from the Hunters Association. The boss asks if this looks like a rank. Even with his underdeveloped magic, not using items or armor and wearing sportswear, he managed to demonstrate frightening feats. The boss asks if you got the information. He thinks that even all this brute force has its limit and orders to prepare completely to eliminate him. The next day at the Hunters Association, several reporters photograph the guild leaders and the protagonist. They are receiving recognition for their efforts against the rift. While everyone is in suits, the protagonist is casually wearing his sportswear while being filmed by the raid assistant in the forest. He is quite pleased that many people are watching his live stream. Comments keep coming up when the protagonist is awarded. A man who seems to be from the army looks him up and down, analyzing his clothes. He asks if he needs to bring new clothes for him, but is answered with petulance by the protagonist, leaving him deeply irritated. After receiving his awards, he asks if he can leave, but before they can answer, he runs to the exit. His friends present they are no longer impressed by these things, as the protagonist is someone who does not adhere to the shackles of society. We are shown the castle of the guild paid in China. A woman in a large hot water bathtub watches the TV, seeing the footage of the protagonist fighting the Crimson Monster. She observes his positions and movements, startled, getting out of the pool and quickly asking what his name is. Her assistant says he is Hunter Hyonu, who just came out of the tutorial. She orders to find out everything about him from his past to the present. While the assistant agrees, a man wearing a white kimono enters the room. He greets her and says he brings news regarding the subjugation of the Wayan Guild. Not even looking at him, she asks what the information is. It seems they managed to take control of all the dungeons in the southern region. But an executive was captured by the Heirs Guild. While drying off, she says that if an executive fell into the hands of inferiors, he doesn't even deserve to be in the guild. She ties her hair and says it's embarrassing they are not managing to capitalize on all the guilds in their own territory. While looking at the protagonist on the screen with a look of love, she says this is a small price to pay to continue maintaining that oath. Back in Korea, Soo-yeon asks the protagonist if he understands how famous he has become. He has become a public figure now, but he doesn't understand how difficult this can be. On the internet, people post news and malicious comments about him. They say it was because he went to receive the award in casual clothes and flip-flops, and then ran away from there. Haeyeon doesn't care about this since he won't see them again, and will continue living the way he wants, leaving his friends worried about his future. He stands up saying he needs to leave. When his friends ask where he is going, he answers that he will go on a date, leaving everyone in shock. When he leaves, everyone there is worried about him. Even though he has left the tower recently, he has already made several enemies. Stikwon says they shouldn't worry about him since he is strong, and it's not like he goes around causing trouble. He goes to an isolated alley. While waiting for the invitation time to end, a bright light surrounds his body and he goes back to Av's room. He asks if the status sweep has leveled up. Av answers that after fighting the Crimson Demon, he went from lower ranked to inferior rank, not leaving him satisfied at all. Av tells him to calm down and that she is just repeating what she was instructed to say by the system. She says that the information he can access is practically the same, leaving him very irritated. But now that he has become an official guardian, she can share the tasks he must complete, and once he has completed them, he will be able to find out everything he wants. Now that he has become a guardian, his role is to stop all climbers who ascend the tower. He says he was trapped in the tower for 12 years and never saw one of them, but is corrected, being told that it's not the tutorial tower being referred to, but the tower that consists of 12 layers, of which the earth is one. What he has to protect is the 9th layer, the earth. Haeyeon just wanted to know who imprisoned him in the tower, and now he has become a protector of the earth. All these things are too complicated for someone who just wanted to live in peace and quiet. Ao says that if he doesn't stop the climbers, the 9th layer will be destroyed, which means the end of his life and his friends. He's outraged at not having choices and just having to shut up and obey. Av tries to ease the situation by saying it's not quite like that, making the protagonist even angrier because she can't give a good reason. Ave, who has the prestigious title of administrator of the new system, is being too soft on him. She calls his name, changing her tone of voice to a serious one. However, the protagonist responds even more seriously, making Eve realize that this approach won't work. She changes her tone, explaining that the fact that they chose him to be a guardian was for his own good. She also says there will be rewards, which will increase as he kills more climbers. Haeyeon now speaks in a calm and serene tone of voice. He asks at what level of scan he needs to be to know who were the creators of the tower and locked him inside. Av again says that his scan level has to be higher to have access to that information. He asks how many climbers he needs to kill to level up, but Ave says there isn't an exact number since they also have levels. To get the information he wants, he needs to kill 5 high-rank climbers. The Crimson Demon he faced before was probably a low-ranking climber, making him understand how this system works. Returning to his home, he is in a library, observing his status window. The only new message there is that he will receive a notification when a climber appears. All this nonsense that the Earth is inside a tower, and that he needs to be the savior of humanity, all this is very complicated. So to simplify things, what he has to do is beat up some monsters until he can find out who imprisoned him inside the tower. While thinking about this, he receives a call from Soyeon. When he answers, she says he's in serious trouble and to look at the news immediately. When he turns on the TV, he is faced with presenters talking about the murder he committed on a member of the Heirs Guild. The protagonist goes to Seokwon Han's house. The phones won't stop ringing, but he is calmly lying on the sofa. Soyeon says he was already famous as soon as he left the tutorial tower. After clearing the rift alone, his popularity only rose. But now with murder accusations, other countries may start paying attention to him. He asks why they are so worried. Soyeon, blazing with anger, asks how they wouldn't be worried. He's looking at her and a strange feeling passes through his mind. It's as if he's being scolded by his wife, but he's never been married or had a girlfriend, so he asks if Soyeon likes him. She breathes but can't control her anger, activating her lightning ability. She asks if he thinks she's joking, and if he says one more thing like that, she'll fry him. Seon arrives showing his cell phone, several missed calls from reporters, and he's also the #1 topic on Twitter. Stikwon says this isn't the first time this has happened, and Seon reads some of the articles about them. The articles, besides talking about him, are trying to ruin the reputation of the other guilds, but the protagonist seems not to care so much about it, which even impresses them for his lack of concern. Stikwon recommends just turning off the cell phone like him and says the press conference starts in 30 minutes. The other two, who didn't know about the press conference, ask if he planned anything. They even think he intends to beat up all the journalists and declare war against the Heirs Guild. The protagonist is disappointed by the way they think he will act, while Sikwon laughs at the situation. At the Heirs Guild, the director asks if everything is going according to plan. Yu replies yes and explains the whole situation. Judging by public opinion, it will be very difficult for him to get out of this. The director is satisfied, thinking that whoever strikes first wins the fight, as it's too late to make amends. He plans to stay one step ahead of Hayonu, finishing him off once and for all. At the press conference, journalists ask if this information is true, if he really attacked the Heirs Guild. The protagonist, seeing all these people taking pictures and recording, says he doesn't know how press conferences really work and will just do it his way. He chooses one of the reporters who asks how he is feeling at the moment. He simply replies that it's crap. Another reporter asks if it's true that he murdered a member of the Heirs Guild, and he honestly replies yes, leaving the people there shocked. He adds that he doesn't know why Ares is treating him this way. He only refused their proposal once and they've already gone so far. Displaying the video of his encounter with the assassin, people are dumbfounded by the twists in the situation and continue watching the video. The entire conversation he had with the assassin is being shown to the media. They question where this was recorded, and he says it was in the swamp dungeon, where he went to defeat the boss. People still don't believe it, saying the recordings could have been altered. But knowing this, he takes out his cell phone from his pocket. This cell phone belongs to the guy who tried to kill him. He doesn't know exactly what content is on it since it's locked, but he'll find out when he takes it to the police. He adds that as a rookie who just came out of the tower, the only thing he could do was defend himself. He says the assassin was killed by the mega crocodile in an ambush. People there start writing down what he said and sharing it on the internet. He leaves the lecture irritated that he has to do so many boring things. Now the game against the Heirs Guild has turned. The protagonist, who is being accused, is now applauded, while the Heirs Guild is accused of lying. In the office, the director is furious about how he turned the game around with simple audio recordings. He underestimated him, thinking he was all muscle and no brain, but he won't let it end like this. In a restaurant, his friends are impressed with his meticulousness. They didn't expect he would manage to get a recording and even grab the assassin's cell phone. But the protagonist says the cell phone wasn't the assassin's. In fact, he just picked it up randomly in the room. They question if the other things are also lies, but he corrects them, saying the recording is true. Since they kept saying that Ares was dangerous, he was recording audio all the time. But he didn't imagine they would be as useful as they are now. They say that if the police get this cell phone and investigate, he will be discovered. But he explains that probably the guys from Ares will pay him a visit, and then he will simply tell him to get lost in his own way. The Ares Guild is based in the USA. They are one of the largest guilds in the world and have headquarters in various locations, but apparently, no other country has granted as many dungeons as Korea. Whether it's a bad plan or a proposal, it doesn't matter to him. They have a lot to lose in this fight, but he doesn't. Sometime later in a parking lot, Hayao tells Sian to go home alone because he needs to take a walk. He goes to an alley and realizes he's being followed by several people. He knew something like this would happen if he was alone, but didn't expect it to be so fast. One of the men approaches and says someone is looking for him and that he should follow him. The protagonist says he doesn't want to, and the man responds that he will take him by force. Hayao is impressed with their courage as he picks vegetables from the ground. The ninja gets angry at his impudence and attacks him, using magic in his 2 hands, but this attack is easily stopped using the cabbages. After seeing the boss being thrown away, all the ninjas attack him at the same time using all kinds of abilities, but none of their attacks are strong enough to penetrate his skin. At this, the elevator begins to descend, and the henchmen become worried about who might be coming. The elevator explodes with a bright flash, and the protagonist's guide is thrown through the door. Seeing the explosion, the henchmen prepare to stop the intruder. Our protagonist appears walking through the smoke. Hayan taunts them, saying that this place is showing that they had a lot of money. One of the henchmen draws his sword while questioning who he was and how he managed to enter the base. Our protagonist introduces himself as the Reaper who came to end them while approaching them. At the same time, in a nearby room, a girl was tied up with energy ropes and covered in marks. Sian questions if she wouldn't like to start talking since her guild had abandoned her. The girl simply looks at him seriously without saying anything while Sian tells her to stop resisting. He mentions that she can share the guild's internal information to be freed. Even so, she continues to just observe him without changing her expression or saying anything. This irritates Sian, who orders his henchmen to take her for another session. But one of the henchmen mentions that she might not survive their tactics, asking if he was sure about this. Sian ignores the warning, saying that even though he doesn't believe she will say anything, they must do everything to force her to talk. He accepts the order and approaches the girl to take her away. At that moment, a loud noise comes from behind the door, followed by a bright explosion. This impresses Sian, who watches as they hear the protagonist's light footsteps. Hayan appears, saying he heard they were looking for him. He mocks the hunters, asking if they were done tickling him. Several screams are heard through the dark streets, revealing that the hunters were defeated. The last of the hunters standing is grabbed by the neck by Hayan as he begs to be released. Our protagonist smiles, saying he seemed like a special guy. He then asks the hunter to guide him to the person who was looking for him. They arrive at a bunker on the outskirts of Gwangju and Gyeonggi-do. 2 guards discuss the guild's effort to build that place, and that it was all done with dirty money. But his companion explains that only they would accept hunters like them and asks if he didn't find it funny. The hunter agrees with his companion, mentioning they would have a celebrity going to that place. His companion confirms, saying it was Hayan who was being taken there. They discuss Hayan appearing so much on TV, being very fearless, while mentioning he would be caught by Team 1. Then his partner mentions that the higher-ups were annoyed, asking if he didn't see what the protagonist did at the conference. At that moment, something falls from the sky a few meters from where they are, exploding the ground. The 2 guards prepare for whatever caused that explosion. Our protagonist appears, holding his guide by the neck. He tries to confirm if he was in the right place, and the guide mentions that he was. Then the guards recognize Hayan while preparing for any of his moves. Meanwhile, inside the base, some henchmen hear the noises of the commotion happening at the entrance. When he looks inside the room, he ends up seeing the girl sitting and tied up, who stares at him a bit calmer. Our protagonist taunts him, saying he already had a guess while he was behind him. The president asks about Team 1 while trying to understand how he got there. Hayan tries to confirm if it was the team sent to deal with him, saying that at the moment they were resting. Like all the henchmen in the next room, he gives the manager a choice between getting a beating or sitting down to talk. While Sian is impressed, his partner draws a sword and tries to take down Hayan. But our protagonist simply lands a direct kick on his partner and throws him away. After taking down the henchmen, Hayan taunts them, saying the people were quite aggressive even after inviting him. He adds, asking if they usually treat their guests like this. Stan starts to laugh, remembering they said he was rank A, while the bunker hunters were at least rank B+. Some were almost rank S and were sent to catch Hyan, but even so, they all ended up being defeated by the protagonist. The hunter also remembers the report mentioned Hyan stopping the crevasse alone. Then he acknowledges that Hyan was the rank S at the top of the ranking. Noticing this, he recognizes that even being rank S, he couldn't defeat him even if armed. Our protagonist calls him, asking if he was deaf. Stan returns his attention, and Hyan repeats the choices given to him. For a moment, he loses his temper until he starts to control himself and agrees to talk. The two sit face to face at a table as the president plans to discover the extent of his power. He knows he cannot rush this conversation while wanting to find out more. Hyan decides to start the conversation by asking about the payment. Sian is confused, and the protagonist says he would like compensation for the damage that Ares caused him, because besides sending assassins to finish him off, they also spread false information in the media. He adds that he wouldn't let this slide, and Sian asks what he wants. Our protagonist demands 10 billion won for the damages plus some beginner dungeons as a bonus. Hearing his request, Sian becomes furious, complaining that he was going too far. But Hyan says he believes is an acceptable amount given their size. The president begins to tremble with anger while trying to stay firm in front of the protagonist. He recognizes that although getting the money is simple, the rights to the beginner dungeons would not be so easy. After all, he realizes that Hyan's desire would be a monopoly on new hunters. Our protagonist decides to provoke him, saying he would include another 500 million for wasting his time. Shin asks if he saw any benefit in continuing with a bad reputation with Ares. He also recalls that if it was just about the money, he could have accepted the deal he refused. He mentions that if Hyan becomes a member of Ares, he could have all kinds of support with beginner dungeons. Hyan becomes curious about the idea, while the manager asks why have a big guild as an enemy when they could work together. But the protagonist says he has no way because he was trying to bring up a subject in the middle of his compensation request. Besides remembering he is doing all this while the girl is still tied up next to him. At this point, he asks what they were planning to do with her. Our protagonist says to rest assured and already warns that if they mess with him again, they will regret it. Xian is irritated by the comment, saying Hyan is very conceited. Still, he insists on asking for his compensation and tells him to stop wasting his time. He then stands up and asks if he would accept the terms or fight. Back at Cyan's apartment, the protagonist appears, which impresses him. His friend shouts at him, asking who the girl he was carrying was, meanwhile in a strange place with a huge ruined castle. A man with tied hair appears walking through the castle ruins. The man looks at the tower head, saying he was reaching the 9th layer. Back at Cyan's apartment, his friend explains what happened and how he managed to rescue the girl. Stevion remembers how powerful Cyan is, and Hyan says he can handle things if he's afraid. He asks why his friend brought the girl there. Our protagonist explains that he wanted a guarantee and was curious about some things, which confuses Cyan. But Hyan asks not to worry, as it is something personal. This still leaves Cyan worried, and he decides to go after dungeon spoils as there are many bosses. Hyan observes the girl lying down and notices her tattoo on her shoulder. Slowly, he begins to notice that she reminded him of something. Despite the void rule forcing him to abandon himself, he still remembered the skull mask he was obsessed with. He wonders if it is just a coincidence that this girl had a tattoo like that mask. The protagonist opens the status window and discovers the girl's information Honglin, except for her skills. He discovers that she has nothing special in her status. When he realizes he couldn't remember the girl, he decides it would be better to ask her directly when she wakes up. At this moment, Hyan receives a notice about a climber starting the climb to the 9th layer. Because of this, he ends up being summoned to the tower in a few seconds. Hyan receives the information and is paralyzed trying to understand. Upon arriving at the AV location, he complains about being called in such a hurry. Ignoring his comment, the director warns that he is coming. This leaves the protagonist confused, wanting to know who he is. She explains it would be the next climber with a more worried tone. Our protagonist asks what kind of person he is and when he should appear. The director opens her alert window and starts to speak the information. But at that moment, Hyan punches her head, complaining that she wouldn't say anything if not for the alert window. AV reminds him that it is not her fault, as his status authority is very low, as she had mentioned many times. Hyan complains that the notification is useless, asking why he was called there. She explains that she has a favorite to ask him, which leaves the protagonist confused. The director explains that this climber would be different from the others, and the guardian would need to prepare in advance. Our protagonist questions what he needs to do, and the director explains that he needs to awaken his mana as soon as possible, or he will be in danger. This excites Hyan, imagining that he is of a high level, and AV says that just awakening mana would be useless if he were. Because if he were of such a high level, it could mean the total destruction of the world. She says the protagonist would not be able to handle this crisis without magic. Hyan asks if she is not sure where it will happen and if it could become a crevasse. The director explains that crevices may or may not happen, so she did not know the possibilities. All she knows is that a climber depends on his skills and achievements. With this, Hyan understands that an intermediate level climber would be arriving, and the problem would be the lack of information. He gets irritated with the situation and raises his fist, which worries AV, asking him to stop hitting her head. AV says that he was raised very poorly, asking if his parents didn't teach him not to hit a cute girl like her. But Hyan explains that his parents died when he was very young in a car accident, so he doesn't know them well. Then AV stands up to apologize to him for saying that. Our protagonist reassures her, saying that he doesn't care much about it and doesn't need an apology. Upon hearing this response from him, AV recognizes that Hyan is truly a kind person. Back at the guild base, the protagonist complains if there is not something wrong with their method, believing it to be a fraud. He recalls being told that he would feel the mana flow very quickly. Sueon asks him to be careful and not erase the magic circle, because it costs 5 billion won. Hyan complains that it would be nice if he could do it on his own, but Sueon explains that she has never heard of a hunter awakening mana without the help of a mage. She also says that her help is necessary to concentrate his mana, and it would be the only way to release his mana. Our protagonist asks if using a mana potion wouldn't solve it, and his partner begins to lose patience. At that moment, the protagonist's friend arrives, asking what they were doing, because it was the 4th day of training and it showed no progress, which irritates Hyan, thinking that he wanted to provoke him. Styan explains that he was there to deliver a message to him. He asks if Hyan created a guild because they received guild creation documents, which impresses him. Sueon is impressed, asking when he did that. Our protagonist explains that since he got some dungeons, he needs to organize everything, and they discuss the guild name. But then he asks if the girl he saved has woken up after all this time. His friend says that she is still unconscious. Hyun asks if she is not in a coma, and Seon explains that the nurse had already said it was due to trauma. With this, the protagonist acknowledges that he needs to continue waiting. However, he gets irritated by sitting in the magic circle for days and not feeling his mana emerging, saying that he can't tell if it worked. Their partner asks if it wouldn't be better to find someone who can penetrate to the source of Hyun's mana. Seon asks if she was talking about Nakagawa Yasumi, and she confirms. This conversation leaves the protagonist confused, thinking about what this idea would be. They explain that the master of the Japanese guild Izanami has an ability that allows her to use the hunter's blood to increase attributes. Hyun gets excited, asking if it wouldn't be easier to do that, but he realizes that he would need to go to Japan to meet Yasumi. This makes him angry, saying that it was annoying while dragging his hand on the floor. Without realizing it, he erases a small part of the magic circle, which leaves Sueon in shock. Because of this, the two try to calm her down while their partner causes a lightning storm. Meanwhile, in front of the intermediate labyrinth of Sujinami in Tokyo, screams of despair were heard. Master Yasumi found herself in a dangerous confrontation against a powerful being, with her allies asking for help. An energy blade appears going in her direction, and Yasumi warns her allies to dodge. But they cannot react in time and are affected by the blow. The effect of this is her two allies practically disintegrated while she observes the other allies fallen. Yasumi complains about her allies' lack of skill until she notices someone approaching. The climber approaches the kneeling master after dodging his attack. She asks who that powerful being in front of her was. He then explains that despite dodging the blow by luck, he would still answer her question. He just didn't know which name to choose, as he received several names from the hunters. Some called him the climber, and others the destroyer, or even demon and god of thunder. But he says his favorite name was Chiyama, and with that he strikes Yasumi. With this, Hyun receives an alert that the climber reached the 9th layer in Sujinami. Upon receiving the alert, he ignores Sueon, almost destroying the place, and asks his friend for a ride. As they head to the airport, Hyun keeps an eye on the news about the climber case, seeing the chaos being created. He wonders if everything would be okay without having his mana awakened. Seon asks why he wants to go to Japan so suddenly after all he was complaining about having to make this trip before. Hyun makes an excuse, saying that he had things to resolve in Japan. But his friend asks if he had a passport, which makes the protagonist stare at him silently. He wonders what he could do now, because he needed to go to Japan soon to face the climber. Sometime later, in the conference room of the Japanese Hunters Association, 4 people are gathered. One of the men at the table asks how Yasumi managed to survive, as she was considered dead in the news. Yasumi explains that she managed to revive thanks to an artifact she possessed. The man asks if Chiyama was really that powerful, and she confirms. He then mentions that the news of an S-rank's death made the hunters afraid to help them. He adds that if even Yasumi couldn't defeat him, the others wouldn't have much chance being in the same rank. They recognize that the Hunters Association was in trouble, and they needed some external help. But meanwhile, casualties continue to occur, with the association unable to do anything about it. But at that moment, the TV shows Hyun in the middle of a place destroyed by Chiyama. Yasumi is impressed while they ask who he is. Hyun approaches Chiyama while he continues observing the protagonist with his sword in hand. He tries to open the status window, only to see that he had no authorization, understanding that it wouldn't work against climbers. With that, he asks if the climber came from a historical oriental drama. As the protagonist asks who he is, Chiyama fires an energy blade at him. The attack collides with something in front of him, and Chiyama notices Hyun emerging behind him, ready to attack. Chiyama manages to defend against the blow with his sheath. Hyun tells him not to swing his sword out of nowhere, asking him to answer his question. With that, Chiyama acknowledges that he managed to dodge his blow, saying he will answer his question, introducing himself. With that, he fires another energy blade, which Hyun narrowly dodges. Looking back, he notices the explosion caused by the attack. Our protagonist recognizes that despite him being fast, he could still handle that speed. He recognized that the blow might seem simple at first, but the reality is that the blow is a series of cuts released together to completely slice his target. Recognizing this, Hyun understands that he needs to prevent him from using his sword, taking advantage in close combat. At that moment, Hyun lands a punch against the climber, managing to destroy his sheath, and this time hitting him full on. His blow hurls Chiyama against the wall, and the protagonist charges at his enemy to make sure he doesn't have space to retaliate. Chiyama gives a slight smile, finding Hyun interesting. With that, he evokes his mana, which pushes Hyun away. As he gets up, Chiyama asks who Hyun was, because he was the most powerful he has faced in these years. Everyone is impressed with the mana he displays while walking towards the protagonist. The protagonist's friend asks if the crevasse emerged 2 hours ago. Yasuni explains that this is why they were waiting for help, while wondering if it was a good idea to let him go. Then Sigyeon recalls that his friend just ran off after getting off the plane without saying anything. He wonders why he was so keen to go, thinking that maybe Hyun can predict where and when the crevasse will happen. Meanwhile, Hyun keeps dodging his enemy's attacks, trying to get closer, wondering what that ability is. But Chiyama asks if that really looks like an ability to him. With that, he explains that Hyun will be devastated by the storm of lightning, while being torn to pieces by the celestial sword. The climber explains that he doesn't use something like what the people he considers barbarians call an ability. Hyun notices the danger of the blow and realizes he needs to dodge that attack. Despite thinking about stepping back, he notices that it would only give an advantage to his enemy, and changes his mind. He grabs Chiyama by his clothes and headbutts him to avoid the blow. This attack leaves the climber dazed while Hyun prepares to strike back. With that, the protagonist uses the Absolute King ability, which hits his enemy head on with a direct blow. Our protagonist wonders if this worked. However, he is amazed to see Chiyama standing full of mana and with a huge glow above his head. Chiyama says that Hyun is not only interesting but also powerful, as he slowly walks towards the protagonist. He explains that this attack had never been used since he became a climber, and taunts him to try to defend against it. Hyun recognizes the danger of this as he approaches to try to close the distance. The climber says that this technique is the reason he is called the god of thunder. With that, he destroys the field in front of him with a celestial sword, lightning of condemnation. In the association room, Seon is impressed with his monstrous power, saying it is completely out of reality. That attack destroyed everything in the area it hit, leaving only the smoldering field. Chiyama acknowledges Hyun's intelligence for clinging to him the moment the climber swung his sword. Still, he recognizes that the protagonist was not unscathed as Hyan feels his enemy's electric current running through his body. Hyan notices that the lightning continues to course through his body while he continues to tremble. At that moment, an alert window appears informing that mana has been obtained and his magic rank has risen to E along with various alerts. With that, he wonders what is happening and moves away from the enemy. The climber taunts him again, asking if he could get lucky again. Our protagonist understands that this was not a system ability but a technique developed by Chiyama. He remembers that Chiyama would be a type of demon from novels depicted as having perfect magical level and absolute control of mana. Chiyama asks if he still intends to persist in the fight after seeing his technique. Hyan asks if he thinks that technique is enough to scare him, and Chiyama gets irritated, saying he cannot be defeated. The protagonist recognizes that he cannot defeat him with his current power, but he wonders if he might have a chance by using the lightning that energized him against his enemy. At that moment, he recalls that when he was trapped in the tower by the curse, there was only one technique he could never keep up with. Chiyama Shingong is a martial technique used only by the best martial artists in the world. He remembers that the techniques he used were just copies of the techniques he tried to learn from the novels he read. With that, Hyan charges his mana and evokes a pair of wings on his back. Our protagonist says that Chiyama became his mentor for 10 seconds, which impresses him. The wings on his back begin to writhe around the protagonist, who concentrates. He asks to show what he learned from his mentor. Hyan explains that his technique is about accumulating all the magical power in a single point and exploding it. At that moment, he uses the divine kick of extreme destruction, which explodes against his enemy. The drone that was watching them from afar ends up being hit by the impact of the collision of techniques and is knocked down. As it falls, the drone only manages to record Hyan standing in the empty field alone with no sign of Chiyama. An alert window appears informing that he had defeated Chiyama and was collecting enhancement information and status rights. Soon after, another system alert appears summoning him for 10 days from now. Meanwhile, at Powder Castle, a woman with the same tattoo as the injured girl was watching Hyan's fight. She is impressed, imagining that he might be her master. At that moment, she remembers when she was in the tower being defeated by zombies and believed she could no longer win. When she gave up and just waited for death, someone appeared and defeated all the zombies while wearing worn clothes and a skull mask. The girl remembers that this masked man taught her martial arts and the path of superiority. With it, she wonders what the remaining area would be, and her ally explains that it would be the dungeon managed by the Waiyan Guild. Her ally says that if she conquers it, all the dungeons in China would belong to the Pado Guild, and the leader gives them a month to conquer it. This request surprises him, and the leader mentions that she would go with them because she swore to give her master a place worthy of him. While she remembers that she will reunite with her master and gets happier, she believes she needs to hurry. Returning to Korea, Hyan is greeted by an absurd chaos of people wanting to talk to him after seeing the fight. A huge group of journalists bombard them with questions while they keep taking pictures. Hyan tells everyone to stop asking questions, while Seon thinks that he also wanted to ask him. Then he throws the responsibility to his friend, saying that he would answer the questions. With that, all the journalists surround Seon while Hyan runs away, making his friend irritated with him. Upon arriving at the guild base, Hyan complains that everyone keeps bombarding him with questions, asking Seon to deal with the situation. But at that moment, he finds the injured girl standing and looking at him. She lowers her head, thanking Hyan for saving her life. Our protagonist remembers Lin's name as he listens to her information. Lin explains that she was an officer of the Pado Guild who was captured and tortured by errors after trying to occupy their dungeons. Hyan takes the opportunity to ask about the tattoo she had on her shoulder. The girl explains that it is a symbol of the Pado officers, and that the master said that this tattoo means that only the sky is above us. But the protagonist doesn't quite understand, and Lin just repeats that it was what the master said while doing the tattoo. She remembers the master telling Lin that she was above everyone and that everything else should be under her feet. When she tries to complete her story, Hyan gets irritated and puts a stop to it. This attitude scares Lin, who asks if she said something wrong, and Hyan tries to calm down. Our protagonist believes this is another one of his past mistakes, wondering how this happened. Lin's phrases were things he did in the tower when he believed that if he learned martial arts he could get out of the tower. Because of this, he developed second-year syndrome, making him imitate characters from web novels and anime. When he hears Lin's comments, he recognizes that someone out there is spreading his dark past with tattoos. At that moment, he remembers someone he believes is the person spreading this. Hyan asks Lin to send a message to her leader when she returns to her guild. The message would be to never come after him, while he shows he is very serious. After this conversation, Hyan sends Lin back to China, and a few days pass. Another program with Ha-young begins with Hyan as a special guest. This impresses Sueon, discovering this watching the program, asking what he was doing there. Seon says the protagonist needed to announce something, and whatever he does now is also in his interest. Hyan tells the presenter that he only appeared because he needed to promote something. He says he created a guild and was recruiting interested people, which makes his friends even more confused. Sometime later, Seon complains that he made this announcement on TV, while Hyan didn't expect so many interested people. His friend says he won't help him, while they both stare at the countless piles of boxes of candidates' resumes. With that, the protagonist makes a deal with his friends to help him in exchange for being able to use the beginner dungeons sometimes. Sikwon recognizes that only Hyan could call powerful guild leaders to help him with this. He asks if the protagonist wouldn't get bored having to take care of so many things, but Hyan's response is only that he wanted to make money. Hyan explains that he made a lot of money with the passes in the dungeons, and now having his own, he can earn even more. His friend asks if he hasn't made enough, and Sueon says it must be related to some childhood poverty trauma. In the middle of the reviews, they reject a hunter who complains about being an experienced rank C. But Hyan just says he looked at the resume and didn't like what he saw before expelling him from the room. At that moment, the candidates notice who is the person rejected and start wondering what the requirements to be accepted are. Meanwhile, Hyan observes his status, saying that despite not having a problem with his rank D status, he had a selfish personality. Our protagonist recognizes that despite complaining about the skills he received at the beginning, the new skill is very good. He remembers talking to AV, who thanks him for defeating the climber Chiyama. With that, she explains that she would enhance his skills, and Hyan wonders what she meant by that. AV says she would add an option to the authority over status skills as well as improve the alert system. Hyan doesn't understand what personality check would be asking what this enhancement would be for, but he begins to realize the usefulness of this skill during the candidate's interviews. When the next candidate arrives, he observes her status, noting that she has an opportunistic personality. While he can't decide, he looks at the candidates next to her and notices they have better personalities. One is friendly and the other has a sense of self-sacrifice, making him excited. With that, he accepts the 3 into the guild, which makes them happy. Our protagonist believes that everything will work out as long as they fulfill their roles efficiently. Since Hyan gets lazy, he decides to finish the interviews, which makes his friend ask what kind of recruitment lasts an hour and a half. He explains that he chose members who wouldn't rob him at the first opportunity, and that was enough. Sion asks if he chose them after checking their attributes, and Hyan mentions that they don't need to be that good since he is the one who will fight. But he asks why no S rank appeared in these interviews. His friend explains that S rank people are so rare that there are only 5,000 in the whole world, and the protagonist asks about his position. His friend says he's in position 163, while Sukwon is in 175 and Soyeon is in 161, which impresses Hyan. However, he warns that reaching the top 200 makes a person famous, causing them to try to take each other's positions. At this moment, Hyan recognizes his friend's level and remembers seeing a graph of S-rank hunters with crossed-out names and asks why. Sion explains that the crossed-out names are hunters who died. Our protagonist asks how so many are dying, and his friend explains that they are trying to get an artifact to achieve ST plus grade. It turns out that hunters can only increase their attributes up to 3 grades above what they achieved when they finished the tower. However, they can surpass this limit if they acquire an ST plus grade artifact located in the deepest parts of the labyrinth. Hyan understands that the labyrinth works like a cemetery for S-rank hunters, but Sion explains that there are those who steal from other hunters who manage to get these artifacts. With this scheme, hunter assassins emerge who end up being expelled from the ranking, having their names removed from the official list. The protagonist asks if the assassins who attacked him were examples of them, and Sion confirms. He acknowledges that Heirs likes to play dirty against others, until they reach one of the 4 initial dungeons that the Heirs Guild lost, called the Barren Swamp. Our protagonist mentions that he will face the boss and take a walk so Sion can leave if he wants. When he remembers that it makes money, he gets excited to enter the dungeon. Upon opening the door, he finds 2 men sitting drinking coffee who are startled to see someone appearing. Then Hyan remembers beating them up before and still provokes them, asking if they didn't get enough of a beating. They apologize while Hyan asks if he can enter the dungeon since he is the new owner of the place. The guard tries to talk about the documents not being finalized while Hyan doesn't care, and they just accept it. At this moment, he walks through the dungeon, remembering that it's been a long time since he was there. Then he notices someone in his way who was happy to meet him. Hyan gets worried, believing it's another Heirs assassin coming to attack him. Although he mentions he was sent by Heirs, the guy says he is not part of the guild. A group of people gather behind him while he asks if he has heard of the hunter-assassin group called Pandemonium. This group is remembered for causing despair to everyone who recognizes their name. Pandemonium is made up of hunters who are in the top 100 of the S rank. As long as they receive a good reward, the members guarantee the completion of the requests, making them considered legends in the community. Rumors say that if you become their target, it's guaranteed you won't survive. But Hyan doesn't care about that and questions the former number 52 Anya Circular, saying that she is an experienced mage. Anya points her staff at him, asking how he doesn't know her even being a hunter. Then Hyan just tells her not to think so highly of herself, which makes her irritated with the protagonist. She starts casting a spell while explaining that it was thanks to her debuffs that their other targets were killed. The mage uses a magic restriction circle against Hyan. With that, several magical bands surround the protagonist to trap him inside the circle. Hyan asks if she can make magic circles, and Anya gets annoyed because he doesn't seem to notice the danger he's in. But the protagonist admits that he knows what's happening and is only asking because he wants to know if he should kill everyone or not. This comment from Hyan makes Anya freeze in fear. At that moment, everyone attacks the protagonist to finish him off quickly. Meanwhile, in the underground city of the Wyan Guild, an attack happened that caused several victims. A hunter named Lee tries to stay on his feet, while someone says they had higher expectations. A girl in Chinese clothes approaches him slowly, saying she was disappointed, remembering that it was supposed to be a key point of the guild. With that, Lee says that although he's finished, his leaders are about to arrive, questioning if she could defeat him alone. The girl shows some interest in what he says and makes him believe there's an opening. At that moment, Lee tries to hit the girl, who dodges without any problem. Lee is impressed, and the girl says that although he's not worthy of her technique, she didn't want to delay meeting her master. Then she uses her extreme sovereign force technique that throws Lee far away. While walking through the wreckage of the base, the girl says it was a lovely day, and she remembers the message her envoy brought from her master. The girl recalls that Lin managed to find him first, which made her happy and resentful, believing her master is waiting. She remembers the message and believes that he doesn't want her to go after him until she fulfills her promise. That's why she must take everything as quickly as possible and build a place worthy of him. Back at the Orang Guild in the Gwangjin-gu area, Soyeon is impressing Hyan bringing the assassin mage, saying he brought someone to fix the circle. He asks if she could do that, and Anya responds fearfully that she can. The girl asks if, in case she succeeds, he would let her live, and Hyan says he will decide depending on her performance. His friend recognizes Anya, and Hyan notices that she really was a very famous mage. With this, Soyeon asks how he ended up bringing her, and the protagonist explains what happened in the dungeon. After the explanation, she's impressed to know that he defeated the assassins of Pandemonium. Then she remembers his attributes and notes that he shouldn't be able to beat them. Hyan just says that his attributes are strange and there's not much he can do. He remembers that it wouldn't help to ask AV because she would probably say his authority is low. Putting attributes aside, Hyan explains that he just needs to scare her a bit so that she works properly. With this, the protagonist remembers how she begged to survive, offering to use her skills to spare her. The protagonist asks if she could fix it without the staff, and she says she can do it without the help of basic skills. With that, he hands her staff and robe, which are S+ ranked, to Soyeon, which impresses her. Then Hyan asks her to take care of Anya, saying he would repay the favor he received. After stopping by a convenience store, he faces a building, saying it's time to thank for the gifts. Upon arriving at the building, the receptionist at the door is startled to see the protagonist standing there. Several security guards approach to expel him, saying it's a restricted area for Heirs Guild members. Hyun asks if Scene isn't around while starting to rummage through his store bag. With that, he pulls out an item with Bat of Justice written on it, saying he brought a gift for him. Then he shows he has a toy hammer, asking if they would want to report after taking a beating. Our protagonist hits the guards with a hammer and leaves the others surprised by being destroyed like that. He provokes again, saying they have courage for standing in the way and just watching what was happening. But he adds that they should be ready to be sent to heaven, which scares them. Meanwhile, in the president's office, the phone rings with the guards informing about Hyun trying to enter. All Sian does is hear the screams of his guards, making him understand how absurdly powerful Hyun is. With this, he fears the news of the incident spreading and ruining Air's reputation, making him consider calling reinforcements. However, he abandons the idea to avoid being seen as incompetent for not solving the problem. Before he can decide what to do, his door is simply destroyed with a kick from the protagonist. With that, Hyun enters the room with his hammer, saying it has been a while, which worries Sian. Our video ends here. If you like it, leave a like on the video and I'll bring the next part. See you next time. Bye bye.